TreVeyon Henderson, potentially the perfect joker for Sean Payton. We're going to dig into that. I'm Henry Chisholm. This is Andre Simone. And as we continue on with our top prospects for the Broncos, next up, like I said, TreVeyon Henderson, the running back out of Ohio State. And before we dig in, let's see what our friend, ALLCITY Draft expert, Fran Duffy has to say.
All right, let's take a look at Ohio State running back TreVeyon Henderson, a true senior, now a part of this draft class. And I'm going to be honest, I go back, I remember his very first college game, Minnesota. It was like a Thursday night. He was a true freshman, 5-star recruit, and he lit up the Gophers for a couple of big play touchdowns. And I immediately wrote this guy's name down on my sheet. I was like, all right, we'll be talking about this guy in 3 years. Injuries kind of took hold after a couple of seasons, and that's something I think you have to worry about it with a back that's just around 200 pounds. That's right around the mark where you're a little bit worried about their viability as a true three-down presence. And I think that's honestly the biggest knock on Henderson. He dealt with injuries pretty much every year of his college career until this past season, which coincided with the fact that Ohio State went out and brought in Quinshad Judkins from the transfer portal, and those guys were kind of Batman and Robin for Ohio State for the majority of this season. I think when you're looking at TreVeyon Henderson, do you always want to try and pair him with an innings eater, with a guy that can kind of eat up some of those carries between the tackles and let him be that dynamic ball carrier? Or do you think that he still has that ability to be that true three-down presence and every down presence? How you answer that question is going to determine how early you're willing to draft this player. Is he a first-round pick, or is he more of a day two type of selection? Again, how you answer that first question is going to determine that outcome. That said, let's get to the film, because to me, one of the most fun players to watch at the running back group with this draft. Explosive. He's a big play waiting to happen in the run game and in the pass game. He's a decisive player both in traffic and in space. He does a nice job of setting up blocks, finding his hole and getting vertical and getting downhill. And again, he creates those big plays in every facet. He's also, look, this is a team captain. Everything you want off the field, that work ethic, that toughness, the competitiveness, it shows up in so many different ways. As a runner, yeah, check the box. As a pass catcher, they move him around. He shows that intelligence to be moved around the formation and win as a route runner. He's running sluggos, double moves, outside the numbers, and creating vertical plays down the field. And then you watch him in pass protection as a blocker, and he's doing outstanding work there. And then you watch him as well in the QB run game, or when they run the two-back sets with both he and Judkins gets the ball, and you see Henderson leaking out to block a linebacker. This is a selfless player, someone you always want for your football team. Again, it all goes back to, at 200 pounds, or just a shade over 200 pounds, how do you feel about his long-term viability as that every down back? Does that matter? Jahmyr Gibbs went in the top 15 a few years ago out of Alabama. He gets paired with David Montgomery, and he's been one of the most electric running backs in football ever since then. If you think that you can recreate that with your team, well, then you might say, let me take a TreVeyon Henderson in the top 20. If not, then you might want to wait a little bit. A player that he reminded me of, I wrote down, a guy that I watched over almost every snap of his career here in Philadelphia, where I live. He reminded me of Brian Westbrook. And Westbrook was a third-round pick out of Villanova. Didn't run as well as Henderson probably would have if he had gone through all of the combine testing. I think when you're looking at Henderson, he's got that ability to be that multifaceted impact starter out of the backfield. Again, it just goes back to what you envision his role being in your offense, not just this year in 2025, but in 2026, 2027, and beyond.
Good stuff there from Fran. Dre?
Yeah.
TreVeyon Henderson. Is he the most jokery prospect in this class?
He's up there as far as the running backs go, and it's interesting, Fran's tidbit, because, yeah, I think the negatives, the workload, and, could he have a similar role to what we saw in his final senior year at Ohio State in the NFL? I think the Broncos are one of the teams that matters the least for, because we've always seen this under Sean Payton, is you always have a Deuce McAllister to Reggie Bush, a Mark Ingram to Alvin Kamara. Bush, Kamara, the more valuable pieces, that's who Henderson would be in this offense. You find that other guy to complement him, and then we're rolling. So because his negatives matter the least, because he is one of the most jokery of the running backs in this entire class, and because of the season he just came off on, capitalizing with just a phenomenal couple games in the playoffs, I think this is a guy who's really intriguing, and for the Broncos, more so than just about for any other team.
And that's what makes the conversation so interesting, is that no matter who the running back is, you're going to see him get like 60%, maybe at max 70% of the touches of the snaps for a Broncos team, just because we've never seen a split any wider than that under a Sean Payton offense. So I agree. And like I said, it makes him kind of a perfect fit for the Broncos. Where he fits into the draft is interesting, though, because there are so many teams who are looking for somebody who can come in and just carry the load. You put him out there, take 90% of your snaps, and there might be some teams that just aren't that interested, which means drafting him at 20 might mean that you're taking him a little bit soon when there's an opportunity to trade down. Because if he winds up being there in the late 30s, even into the 40s, I'm not going to be surprised at all.
No, that's somewhat what you'd expect, especially with the injury history and the fact that he is maybe more, I don't want to say gadget player, but that's what I'm going for. More of a complementary piece than a true core piece to your offense. So yeah, it really is. Do you have that luxury to spend a pick on someone like TreVeyon Henderson in the 20s? That's kind of what it comes down to with draft value on top of the medicals. How do those check out? What is your medical staff saying from their evaluations at the combine? What are the scouts saying from what intel they've been able to gather in 4 years of him at Ohio State?
Yeah. I mean, from what we've heard, it's all good stuff. You know, there's the fact that when the Buckeyes wanted Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss, you know, TreVeyon gives his blessing and says, yep, I love that, even though it means that, you know, that's probably the reason why he wasn't a first-team All-Big Ten running back and was relegated to the third team, because he was splitting those touches. So there's a bunch of those other things you really like. Another one that maybe I get too excited about this sort of thing, but it's the same reason why, you know, I'm willing to be patient with Troy Franklin, why I love Marvin Mims. TreVeyon Henderson was the #1 running back in his recruiting class. Like, he's one of those guys who's been blue chip for half a decade or even more now. And so you see him come in, freshman All-American right away, 1,200 rushing yards as a freshman. Yeah. And then, you know, little injury thing, first team All-Big Ten before Judkins comes in. That's the kind of stuff that if I'm going to make a bet, if I'm going to make a pick that, well, like you said, we'll call it a luxury pick. I want to be taking somebody who I really trust to do this guy, do this thing, not somebody who, you know, is maybe kind of squeaked their way through, or maybe you have a couple questions. He checks so many boxes. And like you said, the only one he doesn't really check is like, yeah, he's only 202 pounds, which in the modern NFL, I'm less worried about than ever. As in a Broncos system, it makes a whole lot of sense.
100%. I mean, we've talked about like meat and potato running backs versus special sauce guys. He's the definition of a special sauce guy. But as a prospect, you're thinking of like upside versus floor, right? He checks off so many boxes that make me feel confident he's going to be a very reliable pro. Team captain at Ohio State. Pass blocking is outstanding. Outstanding. There are no questions about him being a plug-and-play third down playmaker for you right off the bat, because he's so reliable as a pass blocker, super competitive. He's a great runner outside, right? He can catch the ball, but he can also run between the tackles very effectively. He checks off so many boxes. And then you hear Fran Duffy's comps where he throws out Jahmyr Gibbs, who, again, look at his touches at Alabama and Georgia Tech before Bama. Very similar to how TreVeyon's used, and then compares him to Brian Westbrook as well. If those aren't comps that get you excited, I don't know what to tell you. It's a profile that's really intriguing. And I don't know. At the end of the day, we talk about all this stuff, and then it's like, man, he just is such a fit. There's so many things to like. Don't overthink this.
And that's
Maybe
kind
just
of
use a first round pick.
That's where I'm at, because I think I may have been overthinking things a little bit. We've had some of these conversations about him in particular, because, you know, there's a lot of comparisons to a Jahmyr Gibbs, a guy who I believe ran a 4.36 40, and for TreVeyon Henderson, it's a 4.43. And there's little things where it's like, does he quite have that level of juice? That is overthinking it. You know, that's how Pat Surtain wound up falling down to the Broncos. He ran a 4.46 at the combine, and you're like, well, you know, it's good speed, but is he going to be able to keep? It's Pat Surtain. We can all see what's happening. You know, going back through some of those comparisons, I was curious. he averaged 0.255 missed tackles forced per rush attempt. So basically 1 in every 4. That's almost exactly what Alvin Kamara did, slightly better.
Wow.
DeAndre Swift was at 0.2. So you're getting, he broke even fewer tackles. Aaron Jones, who's one of the other common comps, 0.18 at UTEP. So, I mean, you're seeing some of these numbers back up that, like, yeah, don't overthink it. This guy is a blue chip athlete. He's a perfect fit. He's a guy you can put in the slot and let him run routes. And it could kind of be this, you know, I don't even think I'd say final piece for the Broncos, because I still would want somebody who is between the tackles, the Mark Ingram, the Deuce McAllister, but that's so easy to find that even if it's a luxury, I think it'd be a great pick.
Yeah, it's hard not to get really excited for him, and there's a reason we have him pretty highly ranked in our Broncos top 100 as well.
We do, which you guys should go check out at thednvr.com. You should check out the rest of these prospect videos too, because we've got 10 of them dropping. So if this is your first, there's 9 more out there somewhere. Make sure you check them out, and we'll be back with more soon.